Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray, leering at you from the woodline. Visit the mothership at intothefrayradio.com. There you can find all the episodes, the blog posts, ITF gear, and sign up for the free guest newsletter. The weekly show is, of course, always free and available in all podcatchers, but if you'd like to support the show, and why wouldn't you, go to the website and click Become an Insider, which in turn gets you extra content each and every month. And by the way, if you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review in your listening platform of choice, Cosmic Karma shall be yours. Be part of the discussion by joining the interactive ITF Facebook group, follow on Twitter at ITF_radio and Instagram. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com or call the hotline anytime at 844-866-3366. Thanks so much for listening. Now, if you would be so kind, buckle up your safety belts. Put that tray table in the upright position. Liftoff is upon us.
So on this edition of Into the Fray, I have back on with me Max Hawthorne, and he was the guest on episode 114. Yes, folks, I did take the time to look it up. Episode 114 was They Came from the Depths, and we, of course, were talking about the large aquatic dwellers that may still be in existence. And Max did something that caused quite the little stir, and we're finally back to talk about it and cover the entire situation and jabber gibber a little bit about it. But you teased about a road sighting that you had, and you wouldn't hint at all as to what it was. So yeah, that's what we're doing here today. So welcome back, Max.
Well, thank you, Shannon. It is an honor and a privilege to be here, as always.
Well, thank you, sir. Same to you. Yeah, I got a number of, not inundated or anything, nothing crazy. Nobody was cussing at me, which was nice, but there were a couple like, really? You're just going to leave us hanging like that? Like, that's so mean. So people were quite excited to hear about this, so I'm excited to hear the whole thing in detail. Yeah, I don't know where you want to start with this thing. I don't even know how to lead into it, so wherever you would like to start.
Well, first of all, I would start by saying that it wasn't my intention to be on your show before and tease people or anything like that. You know, we were having a little conversation and asked about, sightings I'd had. And that was the most unusual experience, to be honest, of that nature. But I really wasn't comfortable getting into it or whatnot, as people will probably understand. But I figured that so much time has passed. I mean, it's been a good 14 or 15 months at this point. I don't want it to get to the point where you start to forget details or whatnot. And to be perfectly honest, it's just such an intriguing story that I guess when I thought about it in the bigger scheme of things, I guess I might as well get out there and say it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not my forte per se, meaning that, as you know, I'm a novelist, and the books I write are basically science fiction. It's like a sub-genre of horror called marine terror, almost like Jurassic Park type stuff. So my area of expertise, honestly, is prehistoric reptiles, fish, prehistoric animals, things of that nature. You wouldn't expect me to have an experience like this. I certainly didn't, let's put it that way, which is why it was so mind-blowing. But anyway, I'll just dive into it then.
Yeah, sounds good.
So the exact date was November 22nd, 2016. I know this for a fact because I had actually sent out a little email to some couple friends about it and got a response back. And I found the email, so I know the exact date. And what had happened is, first of all, I live in Pennsylvania, in Bucks County, and this encounter took place in Bucks County. I'm not going to pinpoint the location more than that,
right,
for a variety of reasons. But I had picked up my daughter from school, and from aftercare, we were driving home. It was obviously nighttime because it was winter, and it was I remember it being a very blustery night. There was some snow flurries, but the temperatures were probably in the mid 30s at this point. So the snow wasn't sticking. It wasn't coming down like heavy or anything like that. But it was very windy. You could see it swirling around and dancing along the ground and so forth. So we were driving along, and we were going through this one area, and most of the houses in the area have a lot of woods around them, right up behind them, things of that nature. And that was the situation here. It was like a development that we were going through, but the woods were 100 feet away, let's say. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that has some bearing on it. We were driving up a hill, and I was driving very slowly at this point, first off, because there's a lot of children in the area. Secondly, it was nighttime, and obviously a little bit of snow blowing around, etc. So, you want to be a little cautious to begin with. And we were going up the hill, and about, I'm going to guess, at this point it was 50 or 60 feet from my truck, I saw something small in the road, on the actual asphalt of the street ahead of us. It was like a dark, smallish thing in my headlights, and I thought initially that it was a piece of debris or a small box, like maybe a 4 or 5 inch box or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I remember I said out loud, "Uh-oh, we've got something in the road." My little one, she was 7 at the time, was in the back seat. And she ended up seeing it because when I said that, she leaned sideways in her car seat and she was, looking ahead. So at this point, I still thought it was a piece of debris of some kind, or a box, like I said. And my plan was to straddle it with my tires, for safety's sake.
Right.
It could have been a box of nails, some glass in there, whatever. So I slowed down even more. I would say I was probably doing 5 miles an hour at this point. And I was kind of like centering myself, like I said, to straddle it. And it seemed to start moving. And like I said, it was windy out and what. And so I told myself, or I assumed at first, and then I tried to tell myself when things started getting weirder, that it was some sort of box, and that this dark thing that was popping up was actually like the flap of the box, and that the wind was causing that. Mm-hmm. But I got closer and closer, and when I was about, I'm going to say 30 feet from it, maybe, it seemed to start to, quote, stand up or something. Like it kind of raised itself up a little bit, and I saw what at first I thought was like the face of an animal. Mm-hmm. It was kind of like a grayish coloration. Keep in mind, I have powerful fog lights and headlights, but my impression was it was like a dark, almost like grayish coloration, and it had a face, which sort of was not a person's, but it wasn't an animal's. Its eyes were dark, but they were closed, I guess because it had headlights in its face. And its mouth had opened, and it looked, to me, very upset or very angry. I don't know if it was angry or if it was terrified that a huge SUV was coming toward it or what. But it definitely gave off that impression, let's say. And I was remember I was staring at it and I was thinking, is that an animal? I'm like looking at it, like even squinting, and at this point I would say it sort of like was like pushing itself upright. And I would say it was about a foot tall, I want to guess, maybe a little bit more. And when I got even closer to it, like to the point you would start to lose it, let's say, over the edge of your hood,
Mm-hmm.
then this was the craziest part. It sort of like sprang up into the air. And when I say sprang up, like all of a sudden it was in the air and suspended in the air, I would say maybe 15 or 20 feet from where I was sitting, keeping in mind like where I'm seated in the front seat and then the distance to the front of the truck, and then maybe another 10, 15 feet past that, let's say. But it springs up and it's suspended there and it had wings. And I was looking right at it. It had 2 sets of wings, and the wings, like you could see its body first off. It was sort of like, I would say, sort of built like a biped, but if it was a biped, and I think it was because I saw it pushing itself up with arms of some kind, its limbs were all like tucked in, like a straight line. Okay, I don't know if that was for streamlining or what, but the thing that really drew my greatest attention was these wings, and the wings were like at first glance were reminiscent of a dragonfly's, meaning they were insect type wings. They were oval shaped. Like, first off, a dragonfly's wings are tapered. If you've ever seen one, they start off kind of almost square where they connect to the body, and then they kind of taper towards the tips a little bit, and they vary. This creature, whatever it was, had matched set of wings that were the same size, but they were a little more oval shaped than a dragonfly's. They were long, like wide. I sent you the sketch I drew of it, but they weren't tapered, let's say. They were very symmetrical. And the wings were clear, just like an insect's. They were highly illuminated by my headlights at this point, and they were vibrating at a pretty high speed. You could see them, but they were definitely like, twitching really fast. And I guess it was doing this to kind of hover or hold position. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked. First of all, it was not a small thing, meaning that, like, at first glance, I thought its wingspan was only a couple feet, but then later, like, my daughter and I, like, we used like a table for reference to measure it out, and distance and whatnot, and its wingspan was probably 3 or closer to 4 feet, I want to guess. I could also tell you that the wings were very large in comparison to the body, meaning that, like, you'll see, like, on these movies and TV shows, a creature that's got wings that are as big as it is tall, and it's able to fly.
Right.
Like a human, like Hawthorne or something like that. And it's ridiculous. If you look at a bird of prey, an eagle might be 18 inches tall and have a 6-foot wingspan or something like that. I'm guesstimating. My point is that this creature's wings were very large in proportion to its body. I would say altogether maybe 4 times as wide as it was tall. I want to guess. It held position there, and it, like I said, it was fluttering. And at this point, I came to a full stop, and it was literally suspended, 20 feet from me for a couple seconds. And I froze at this point, and I was staring right at it. And I don't usually utilize colorful metaphors in front of my child, but I literally said out loud, I said, "What the hell is that?" And she was like, "It's a fairy, Daddy. It's a fairy," like that. And then right as she said that, this thing like exploded upward, like an incredibly powerful flyer. And it just went whoosh, like straight up over the truck, and it was gone. And it was like the most astonishing thing. So I drove the rest of the way home, pulled into the driveway, and as you might imagine, I was a little freaked out. I have a pretty good knowledge of natural history, and since the Cambrian period or something like that, there hasn't been an insect, first of that size in the existence of the world. There was a prehistoric dragonfly, I think its name was Meganoptera or something like that during the Cambrian. But this was not a dragonfly. It was actually even bigger than that dragonfly. And no insect could survive in 30-degree temperatures. Mm-hmm. In the middle, this is effectively winter at this point, in a snowstorm. So we went into the house, and my wife didn't want to hear it. She thought we were both out of our minds, obviously, and whatnot, which may or may not be true, but anyway. So then I'm trying to convince myself it was a bat. Yeah, that was it. It had to have been a bat. Like when your area of expertise, like I said, is like, people ask me like, what have you seen on the water? What kind of have you seen any insane creatures, something you couldn't explain and things like that. And I've had some weird misadventures in the water. But the last thing I expected to see was what my daughter was calling a fairy, hovering in front of me in my truck, in my headlights, in a development, surrounded by houses. So I go online and I start looking up bats, and I find out the biggest bat in the country is the big brown bat, and it's only 14 inches across or something like that. But I knew it wasn't a bat because I saw its wings, and bats don't have wings like that. This wasn't wings made out of finger bones and skin stretched out as a membrane and things of that nature. This creature had wings like a huge insect. And it was just the most astonishing thing to see.
So many questions. Hair. Did it have any hair in its head?
I did not get to see its, when it was suspended. When it was on the ground. So, this was another thing. Actually, I'm gonna think. I didn't see any hair. Okay, the head was a little kind of conical shape. Mm. It looked different, and this is going to sound insane, but when it was on the ground, it looked different than when it was in the air. Hmm. Meaning that when it was on the ground, I could sketch its face. It might be a little scary, to be honest. It was sort of reminiscent of, have you ever seen the movie The Golden Voyage of Sinbad?
No.
Okay.
Well, I will look it up after we get off.
There's a creature in there called a homunculus.
Okay.
And it was sort of reminiscent of that when it was on the ground.
Okay.
A little bit. Its face was almost like a kabuki mask.
Oh.
But dark.
God.
Not with colors or anything like that.
Okay.
If you picture a very angry, kabuki type mask, but not it's kind of hard to explain. I have a collection of tribal masks staring at me, and that one actually bears a resemblance to what this thing sort of looked like. But when it was in the air, it seemed different. It was well, first off, the wings were clear, but the whole creature had a silvery whitish look to it. It was almost I don't use the word translucent, but it kind of had this ethereal quality to it. And it sort of seemed like it, I don't know if it just gathered its energy, let's say, that might sound a little weird, but, maybe the headlights was contributing to this, but it looked more whitish and silvery when it was in the headlights and suspended there before it, really gathered itself and took off like a missile. And I think that it was hurt. When it was on the ground, it was there was a lot of wind. Maybe it got disoriented, crashed into a power line. I don't know. Maybe it I have no idea, to be honest. But it just didn't look the same colors when it was airborne. If that makes any sense.
I Googled really quickly. Homunculus from Sinbad, and the closest thing, if I'm just talking about the face alone, it looks a lot like the head gremlin from Gremlins. I think his name was Spike. I don't know. That's the closest thing that I can think of. But everyone should just go and Google homunculus really quickly. I'm sure that you don't probably want to maybe relive it by sketching it or anything. So it's easy for people to Google that.
Yeah,
but
the color was definitely like I said, when it was on the ground. But I could tell you this, it looked very upset or angry when I was like approaching it with the truck, which I guess would be understandable if you had, a 20-foot tall vehicle with enormous plates bearing down on you. It was almost frightening looking.
Well, you probably were trying to process it a little differently and maybe reacting to it instantly differently than your daughter. Your daughter actually seemed like she was more excited about it, right? She's like, a fairy, a fairy. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, Dad, what the heck is that? She wasn't very worried about it.
Well, see, she believes in such things. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that she saw it because she was starting to not believe in Santa Claus until this happened. And that kind of changed her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, her whole dynamic shifted. But so me, I'm looking at it as fairies aren't real. That's impossible. What the heck am I staring at? It's like your whole reality all of a sudden just kind of like flies out the window. And you're trying to ground yourself and figure out what exactly am I staring at here? I tell you, like, I had to tell her to not tell her friends in school about it because they were mocking her and making fun of her and things like that.
Yeah.
Last thing I need is my daughter duffing out some girl in her class or something, and then I have to go down there. But
yeah,
that's. I told her. I said, look. I said, don't worry about what they think. Okay, you keep it to yourself. You saw it. I saw it. You saw it because you're special. Just because they've never seen anything like that or they don't believe, it doesn't really matter. Okay, you got to see this thing because of who and what you are. So I was able to get around that, but I didn't, like, I told, first of all, like back then I had an agent, and she was really big into this stuff, fairies and all sorts of creatures like that. And I called her up and I told her what we had seen. And I'm not saying it was a fairy. That's just, what my daughter was calling it. And she said it was what she called a brownie. Now, I have no expertise in fairy creatures or anything like that. I'm not going to pretend to. That it was larger than a regular fairy, that these creatures lived in the forest, high up in trees and hollow trees and things of that nature. And they feed on fruit, berries, that type of stuff. But then she started trying to talk me out of it as if I didn't actually see it, or trying to explain it away and whatnot. And I don't know if it was because she was jealous that she didn't get to experience that herself, or she professed to believe in such things and then didn't really, it was just, but that's what she was telling me initially, that it was a brownie. I spoke to a media rep of mine, and being a novelist that writes about sea monsters once again, he didn't want me, coming out about it. Mm-hmm. He said, you don't have any proof other than a drawing that you did. And that was true. I mean, if I'd had a dash cam, this thing would have been right in my sights. And, I would have been on like the Tonight Show or something like that.
Yeah.
People would have been like, oh my God. But he felt that people would think that, I was like off the wall or looking for attention to tell a story like this or who knows what. And he didn't really feel like I should come out and say anything about it. Half the reason why I sat on it for as long as I have. But I'm sorry. But anyway, it didn't have any hair that I saw. And but the head was kind of like conical shaped a little bit at the top, like it came to a sort of like a peak a little bit. My daughter said that was its hair, kind of tied up and stuff, but I don't know. I didn't have time to see hair. I was staring at these big clear wings and trying to figure out why what at first I thought was a giant dragonfly from the time of the dinosaurs was, in this little town, the street, in the middle of a snowstorm staring at me.
Now, what about, you said the eyes were closed initially. Did it ever open its eyes once it took flight and was hovering?
It was at the distance it was hard for me to see features, to be honest. And like the eyes were, in my opinion, my impression was they were dark. Okay. I can't say it at from 20 feet away that I could see it clearly, because it was only suspended for 2 seconds, let's say. And the wings had utterly absorbed my attention. Like I looked at the whole thing, like I'm like, wow, this creature, it really was beautiful to see when it was flying. It's, it looked like ethereal, and it was a very powerful flyer. You could tell because it was in high wind and it was holding its position vertically, like 6 feet off the ground or something like that, and just staring at me, and the wings were like vibrating, like a hummingbird's. I don't think it was quite that fast though, but and it was just there, and then she was like yelling and yelling, and then it went, and it was gone.
You said all the limbs were tucked in, meaning that even at the knees, if you could even, I don't know if we can label them knees, but we'll just call it that for now. The knees were flexed and bent, so you couldn't see any feet or anything.
No, I definitely think it was bipedal because I saw it pushing itself up as it was like raging at me. Let's call it.
Yeah.
It almost had like the look like when a child's born and they start screaming. They're like, ah! I know this because I experienced it when my daughter was born, but it had that angry, frightened look to it. But it was kind of pushing itself up with these arms, like it was rising up that way. And I got the impression that it stood up. But when it was at a little distance like that, with and suspended, we'll call it, everything like in the center was like almost like a straight line. So any knees or anything like that, whatever it had, would have been like probably its legs would have been bent a little bit, I guess. But the wings were substantially larger than the body.
Yeah, I could see where the wings would take over your focus. I could completely see that. That would be pretty mesmerizing, I think. I don't mean for this to sound like a ridiculous question, but because we've, as a cursory word, named it a fairy, and then even your friend or your past agent, that first woman you spoke of, she brought up brownies. Well, sometimes they're known to wear clothes. Did you get any hint that it had any sort of clothing on?
No, I didn't, because when I first approached it, I was staring at its face, and the face was like, it was face down as we were driving toward it. And when it looked up, the first thing I saw was this face. And like I said, I was like, it's not a box. I'm like, is that? And then I leaned forward. I was like, is that an animal? And I was looking at it and I saw its expression, and it's like, I'm sure it was making noise, but with the truck windows closed, obviously you didn't hear anything. And then it just kind of went whoosh, jumped up. And then I was like, what the heck? And then it was in front of the car and it was in the air. So, I have no idea what you would define this thing as. A few friends of mine that are into the Mothman, as it's known, were claiming that it was a baby Mothman. And I looked at the Mothman reports, etc., and the size, it could have been a young creature like that. But if this was a Mothman, it looks nothing like what people say in terms of these sightings. It looks nothing like the descriptions and statues and drawings that I've seen. This creature had enormous wings, but they were insect-like wings. They were paired sets, oval shaped, clear, very strong flyer, not big, kind of silvery, whitish looking. Well, again, it was in my headlights, but it looked, when it was close up, it didn't look silvery white or anything like that. But if it was a young or a baby Mothman, as it's called, Mothman don't look like what people think, or what they say.
Right.
Okay. And I'm not saying that, Mothman don't exist or anything like that. I'm saying is what I witnessed, the creature that I saw doesn't match those descriptions. It could have been an extraterrestrial for all I know. Seriously. I'm looking at this thing. It could be, this creature could be what is interpreted as angels. Anything is possible. When you see something crazy like this, that goes against everything that your normal day-to-day activities and what you believe is reality or is not, and you're staring at something like this, you have to be open to any type of possibilities or interpretations. I can only tell you what I saw, what we saw, but I don't know what it was,
I find the idea that you think it was injured really interesting and probably really plausible, because it seems like it was an intelligent creature, and you would think that they would be avoiding roads where it would seem like they would know to avoid. But a lot of animals, they're not that smart, so who knows? But do you recall if, and this is a really specific thing, it's probably not even going to be valid, but going off the idea that it was injured, was it actually like, like you would just sit back on your heels and almost be in a full like squat position, or was it more set up like a runner in a more crouched position with one leg forward, one leg back? Like, because the way that you said it sprang up, I'm just trying to picture how it was, how that motion was executed.
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, the area where the creature, this fairy, for want of a better word, was seen, even though there are houses there, like I said, there's tons of woods around there. And it's not far from our development. And I mean, I had huge cat tracks in the snow on my lawn 2 weeks ago that could only be from a mountain lion.
Oh boy.
The other day I had 11, beautiful deer prancing through the yard. Last week I had 41 wild turkeys hanging out together. I mean, so there are many, there's a lot of wildlife. We have bobcats, we have huge mule deer, etc. So in that area, there is a ton of wildlife. It's really the country. There's farms and things of that nature. So it wouldn't surprise me if a creature like this lives in the woods for it to be around there. But with it being so close, like I said, with it being dark, windy, blinding snow, it really didn't surprise me. And I think the only reason that you would encounter something like this is that it gets disoriented or hurt or something like that, and ends up unable to avoid, let's say, an encounter with a human being. When I first saw it, it literally was face down and facing, like its head was towards us, and we were driving straight at, let's say, its head. Like if it was literally lying down on its face, head first towards us. And it looked smaller like that because you were kind of getting, the distance shot. If you were looking at a person from straight above them looking down, all you would see is the crown of their head and their shoulders. Right. See? So, and it was larger than that when it started to get up. But I couldn't really tell you, because this is a quick thing. It kind of like started to rise up, and it probably was crouched or something like that. But I was like kind of staring at this little face. And then as I was getting, you got to remember, I'm getting closer and closer to it. And it was like almost going to disappear at the edge of my hood, meaning I would have run over it, or straddle it, let's say. And then it kind of like went, it was very fast when it moved, and when it wanted to move, it was a quick thing. And when it was in the air, I think it deliberately like held its position there for a few seconds, and it was looking at us. I think it was, I don't know if it was curious, if it was studying, if it was, like thinking about, oh, I'm going to get you. I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe you don't want to know. And I also like the point where you said its mouth is open at one point, and you're like, the windows were up of the truck, and I'm sure it was windy and all sorts of noise and very muffled sounds, if anything. But I bet you're probably a little happy you didn't hear maybe the noise it would make. It would seem like that would just keep me up at night if it was making some sort of a horrible screech or a scream or whatever it was doing.
It reminded me when I was a teenager, we had one of those have-a-heart traps, and we had put it down in Fairmount Park, and we, as kids, we caught an opossum, which of course we let go. And the opossum was very distressed and very upset and angry about being caged. Mm-hmm. And it gave me that same sort of vibe, that kind of like almost like a hissing, like ferocious, like, get away from me type of thing or something like that. But I remember I saw the mouth open, and it was like this, like I pictured it going like, or something like that, Right. But it sort of had a humanoid face. I mean, I saw the face. It wasn't human. It was something else.
Can you, I mean, as best as you can you describe each of the features and maybe what kind of proportions they were with each other? I mean, you've already mentioned homunculus, but...
All I could tell you is, you got, like I said, this was only a couple of seconds, and it's dark and all that, but it was brightly lit. The eyes were closed. Like, they seemed to be dark, but they were closed or almost closed. And I guess that's because it had these headlights blasting in its face. So if you had like enormous lights, like searchlights coming at you, I'm sure you'd be squinting also. Mm-hmm. But the mouth was pretty large in comparison to the head, larger than a person's, let's put it that way. But other than that, and just a general, like I said, it gave me like a kabuki-like impression. I really couldn't give you specific measurements. I'd have to like try and sit down and, pick my brain and try and like sketch and draw and get a thing like a take on it, let's say.
Right.
But it was definitely upset. 100% angry, upset. Probably some fear also, but it wasn't a happy camper. If you were lying face down in a frozen street with snow piling down on you and you were injured, and all of a sudden this big truck's coming at you, you'd probably gather yourself and want to get out of Dodge pretty quickly. So
yeah, it does make you wonder, what in the hell was it doing in the middle of the road like that in conditions like that? And if you hadn't come along, if the neighborhood was really quiet that evening for some reason, well, I mean, what would have happened? Would it have just stayed there? Would it have been frozen? We'd finally prove these things? I mean, what was it doing?
Well, when I was a kid, and I had a lot of experience with animals apparently as a kid, but I had a bat as a pet.
That is amazing.
Yeah, well, it had actually hit like a street light or something in our neighborhood in Southwest Philly and crashed, and it was hurt. And so I took it in and kept it for a pet for a while, and eventually I guess its wing healed and we let it go. But so I have some experience with bats, first of all, and this thing was not a bat. I'll tell you that 110%. But so I guess that it's a similar type of thing. Whether the bat that I caught or whatever that fluttered down, it was just a summer night and it was clear out, and it must have gotten discombobulated or was dodging something else and it smacked into something and it crashed. So I would think in windy, snowing, blinding cold conditions, it wouldn't surprise me for something like that to happen.
Yeah. Just in a little bit of shock there. Well, I mean, it sounds like, if anything, you guys probably helped it out a little bit, because it's like, okay, time to get out of here. A little bit too close to the humans on this one.
Well, we actually, and I blame this for my ex-agent for the whole suggestion about the woods and all that stuff, but we went back to that area in the spring, like a couple of idiots.
No way. I think it's great that you did that. I had that jotted down. Did you guys, have you gone back? Have you looked into it at all? Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is what I should have done, still should do, to be honest, because I know the exact spot where it was, is I should go back there like with a Geiger counter or something and check that specific area. Mm-hmm. Because if this thing was like of an extraterrestrial nature, which people will scoff at, but whatever, maybe it had some sort of radioactive signature to it. I don't know. But what we did do is, my daughter and I, more as a joke or to humor her or whatnot, was we went into the woods immediately in that area, and we brought a bowl of fresh, large blueberries and some strawberries, and we went into the woods. And I can't believe I'm telling you this.
Don't worry, I don't think it's that crazy, because I would have done the same thing. So
we went into the woods, and this is the woods. I mean, we're talking thick woods here, okay? And we found a tree stump, a flat tree stump. Somebody had at one point sawed down this particular tree, and we sat the bowl on there, and we decided we were going to sit around and wait and see if we could entice these creatures, based on my then agent's description, etc., into coming down and communicating with us. And I will tell you, I was armed. I had a sidearm on me, not per se because I'd be afraid of a fairy or something like that, but you don't know what kind of animals are in the woods, including the bipedal variety that you usually see in the news nowadays. But anyway, so
even the hairless bipedal variety can be very scary, so it's always good to go armed.
That's what I'm talking about. Exactly.
Yeah.
But we made a little speech, the whole "we mean you no harm." We didn't tell anybody about what happened, although that changes now, obviously. If you got, want to speak, whatever, nothing came of it. We stayed there for an hour or something like that. We left. We came back the following morning, and the fruit was gone, which of course comes as no surprise. What was a surprise, though, was that the bowl was not knocked over. If a deer was eating the stuff, or even a squirrel, raccoon, you would have thought it would have been knocked over, knocked down, something like that. But the fruit was all gone, picked clean, and just the empty bowl sitting there. And then I was like, well, maybe a person ate it. And then my daughter was like, Daddy, you ever see Shrek, where the waffles are sitting in the middle of the woods and it's a trap? She goes, would any person in their right mind walking through the woods see a bowl of berries and decide, oh, I'm just going to...
delicious. Yeah. She's smart girl. That's smart girl right there. Yeah. It wouldn't be smart to do that.
I mean, so, that doesn't mean anything, obviously. It's just as a lark, let's say we went back and did that, but nothing came of it. But, that's all I can tell you, really.
Did you guys do that again with the bowl of fruit, or have you gone back into the woods in that area at all?
No. I sat on the story after that. You have to remember, this happened in late November of 2016. Then we had the winter, spring. I don't want to sit around in the woods like with berries to give out and stuff. So
you have books to write. People get upset when you don't, right?
They do.
Yeah. So I bet every time you, or both you and your daughter, are driving by that spot each way, going and coming, you guys must just be wondering, are we going to see anything like that again, right?
Well, she has eagle eyes, so she's always on the lookout for stuff. And she saw some strange bird. A few, gosh, let me think about this. It would have been this past fall, I guess, maybe September or something like that. There was a strange bird sitting on like a street sign near our development, which is very woodsy. And as we got close to it, it zipped straight up, and it was gone. But I didn't get a good look at it. Like she thought it was a fairy. I didn't really see it. I saw it move, but other than telling you that it was a gray colored bird or something like that.
Matching the colors of whatever you guys saw that night in November.
Well, the only thing that struck me as odd was the fact that it went vertically so fast. But it was a one-time thing, and it was it was a thing to see. I wish I had a dash cam back then, because it would blow people's minds to see this thing suspended there. Every entomologist in the country would be freaking out.
They would have heart attacks.
Some sort of giant winter-dwelling insect that we don't know about, And who knows what else? But it was freaky.
Because straight out of the gate, you mentioned the county that you're in, and Bucks County, PA is very well known for UFO activity. There was a flap. I don't remember the dates. I'm very bad with dates and years. And of course, Bigfoot. There's lots of Bigfoot and UFO stuff. If some of them they coalesce together, that's a whole nother subject. But you brought the fact, you're like, well, it's just as scoffable to say fairy as it could be something alien. We don't know. Did you, or have you since looked at any reports around that time? Was there any UFO sightings? Or, those are even few and far between. A lot of times people, they do what you do. They see something very strange and they won't really talk about it. And that's understandable.
I spoke to a few people, Julie Wrench, a friend of mine who's a cryptozoologist, she sent me some info on Native Americans. And it was interesting because Native American folklore lists creatures that sound like European fairies.
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting that that bridge exists already between two cultures, just like you have like Sasquatch reportings in Europe and Asia and things of that nature, and also here. It's an interesting coincidence at a minimum. There was this one thing that she sent me called the little person mummy, which if people want to look it up in Wikipedia, it's the San Pedro Mountains mummy, which is this mummified small little creature, or the upper half of it or something like that, but is considered to be an anencephalic infant, if I'm pronouncing that right, from about 1700 or something like that. But the general facial construction, let's say, of this little mummy would be somewhat along the lines of what I saw, and it was estimated to be around the same size, about a foot tall. Now, it doesn't mean anything, because scientists have concluded that it was the skeletal remains of an infant or something, then it is what it is. But what I saw was definitely not a person, and nothing I've ever seen before. It wasn't a bug. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't a bat. I don't know what you'd call it.
Would you want to see it again?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It was, in a safe setting. I don't want it to be very angry at me now that I'm coming on your show. All of a sudden I start getting strange flat tires and some sort of gremlin activity.
You get like the nasty, made out of bone, like the throwing stars that the creature from Jeepers Creepers would make and throw at the bus, that's what you're going to start getting. And then you're like, okay, I shouldn't have talked about it.
It's all Shannon.
It's okay. I'll take it. I will take the blame.
It just, I really wanted to know what it was, though. You find yourself in a situation like you don't have physical proof. If I was out in the woods, I would have expected to encounter a Bigfoot before I would have seen what I had seen.
I mean, I thought that's what the story was going to be. When you said you had a road sighting of something, I was like, oh, sweet, he was in PA, it's a Bigfoot. I mean, that's where my mind immediately went. I'm sure this is the last thing you would ever think you would be witnessing. I bet you're happy that your daughter saw it, though, too. I
am, because it rekindled her belief in magic and fantasy and things of that nature when kids, she's 8 years old now, and, they start to lose that.
Well, what about your belief in magic and whatnot? I mean, now that you've seen this, are you kind of like, wow, this kind of...
Well, it makes you wonder what else is really out there.
Yeah.
I've investigated a lot of lake monster stuff and things of that nature, but and I'm a big Sasquatch fan. I've done so much research on those particular hominids, for want of a better term. But I mean, if fairies or whatever this thing was are real, who else knows about it, and what else is out there?
Right.
Crazy.
Sam Shearon, the guy that does the artwork for my website, and back when I was having those guys on regularly for the co-host, the intro stuff, I think he was in episode, oh God, here we go again, 2 or 3. It was early on, very first episodes of the show when I was introducing everyone to Ryan and to Sam, and this was in Britain, and he was a younger lad, and this one bothers him, and every once in a while I'll rib him about it, and he's like, just be quiet. But he saw basically a grasshopper, a huge grasshopper with a human-like face, and it terrified him. I mean, he was just a kid, and I think in this instance it was chasing he and a friend. It was pretty bad, but yeah, I mean, these things are out there, obviously. I don't see people wanting to come up with stories like this because, I mean, look how long you've sat on this, because you're like, God, I don't even know if I should let this out there. I don't know if I should bring this up.
Well, you definitely risk ridicule when you go public with something like this. I mean, I wouldn't push to go on Fox News or something like that.
Right, no.
Especially without at least a picture or something like that. But it was something that deserves to be told and to not be forgotten. The sketch I sent you is as close as I could, get to it. That was like what was going on. The layout, the sidewalks on either side, the street, the lighting, and this thing suspended there. It was just, I tell you what, I will say this. I really feel like it somehow, like, it was able to, like, channel some sort of energy, let's say. Meaning that, and maybe its natural state is like it's more brightly colored or what. Maybe it would look darker because it was injured or hurt or I don't know what. But I think that once it got airborne, it was almost like energized. Like it like kind of like pulled itself together, like a bird or something, like spreading its wings, or a peacock or something like that. A peacock looks like an attractive bird, but then it spreads out this tail and all of a sudden it's this magnificent thing. I kind of almost get that impression that it was hurt and then it drew in and it pulled up its energy or power, whatever you want to call it, and it was able to do that and to escape. But it didn't have to suspend itself there in front of my truck like that.
No, it didn't. That's a really good point. It could have just shot straight up into the air. Yeah,
it literally, like, it stared right at us, just looking me right in the eye. And it's I mean, I've had dolphins do that, not suspend themselves in the air, but
that's a whole nother show.
Down in really, like down in the Keys, I had a dolphin like trying to speak to me and making all these purring and clicking sounds and whatnot. And obviously, I don't speak dolphin, but whatever it was trying to say was lost on me. So I don't know. Maybe it was curious. Maybe it just wanted to see what it was dealing with. Maybe it knew that there was a child in there. I've got the tooth fairy going on for my daughter, so it's good stuff.
I mean, with you guys, I didn't know about the second possible sighting. We certainly can't describe or talk about that as much as the first one, but considering that you guys have run into the obvious first very strange thing and then a possible second strange thing, maybe you really do need a little GoPro on the old dash.
I think I'm going to do it. There's so much stuff around here. I mean, animals constantly. Just the fact that I literally have 4-inch diameter cat tracks were on my lawn. And the stride was probably 20 inches, on a guess.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a big guy right there.
Yeah, 18, 20 inches, I would say 20 inches. It was, boom, 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 boom. And at first I thought it was a dog's tracks, and I looked and you could see the pads and the shape, and it was definitely a very large cat. So, and we've had a bobcat in the yard several times, but this is obviously something bigger. I don't expect to run into some sort of flying creature with insect-like wings again, etc. I think it was a one in a million shot, to be perfectly frank.
Yeah.
But it was something to see.
I mean, when I had Pam on about her Fae encounters, and there's one for the insiders only, and then she's been on the main show a couple of times, but I think the subject of the Fae is something that people have been. I've gotten more correspondence about those shows, to be honest, than any other. If there is something, it'd be a second, close second, I'm sure. But I just think that these things, when people encounter them, I don't really know what else you would classify it as, because these things also have been written about for so long that I don't know. I mean, what else would you call that? Not that we're just assuming, yep, saw a fairy in Pennsylvania. That's what it was. But anyhow, if anybody has anything similar, and you want to be forwarded information, I can forward your information rather to Max, or, get a hold of me. You can get a hold of him. What I know you're just trying to get the story out there. Like you said, just to kind of document it. People do forget things, so it's good that you did that. But the drawing, is the drawing okay to use? I just wanted to double check with that.
Yeah, it's fine. It really kind of spells it out for people. I think they're going to understand better. Like when I say like it was hard to see its body and whatnot at that distance.
Yeah.
All that. When we first saw it, we thought it was only, or I thought it only had a wingspan of about 2 feet. And my daughter was saying that it was as wide as my windshield, which I found that very hard to believe. But we were at a place and there were like a restaurant and there were tables. And I backed up and I measured one of these square tables out at the distance that, you know, we saw this thing. And it was larger than I thought, which made sense because when I saw it standing up, like I said, it was about a foot tall. And how could it have a 2-foot wingspan when the wings, which I saw plain as day, were like 4 times its height? Like 4 times it was in terms of height. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, and that thing is just a machine. It's built for flying, like you said. That's pretty bad to the bone, actually. And it's probably more than a 1 in a million shot that you guys saw that.
Well, it was crazy. I walked in the house. I was like, what was that? That was not a bat. Let's look up bats. Yeah, it's got to be a bat, but it wasn't a bat. You saw the wings. Oh, but it's a bat. Come on.
That's funny about your wife. Does she still to this day go, I don't know what you guys saw, but you're just way off?
Oh, she cornered my daughter like a few days later because my daughter was like going on and on about it. And she was trying to see if she was making up a story, if we were playing a joke on her or whatnot. I heard the conversation and my daughter was like, no, she goes, I saw it. She goes, I definitely saw something. She goes, and she said, it was beautiful. That was her description. So, but you know, you got to keep in mind though, I've seen like, obviously did some research on this recently, like people saying they took pictures of fairies and all, and they're these tiny little things, whether they're insects or what, or if they are something like that. But those things are minuscule. Now, this thing was the size of a red-tailed hawk. You know, it wasn't little. I mean, compared to a person, it was small.
Right.
Let's put it that way. But, you know, when you think the stereotypical Hollywood fairy, Tinkerbell and whatnot, it was not this creature. It was, you know, it had to have a wingspan that was pushing 4 feet if it wasn't.
Did you get the sense it was a male or a female? Or that's kind of a weird question, but
my daughter thought it was a girl. She said you know, based on its shape and the shape of its face. If it was a girl, it was a very angry girl.
Mac's always pissing off the women, huh?
Well, you know.
When's that next book coming out? Damn it.
Oh, that was a smart woman. But yeah, I just remember seeing the face and it like hissing at me or something, whatever it was doing, and you know, it was very angry. And like I said, at first I thought it was like an animal. I was like leaning into it. I was like, is that an animal? You know, like, and your brain like sees something and your memory banks, you're going to call it that, start trying to ID it. You know, like, what is this? You know, it's not, you know, and you come up with nothing. You're on empty. You've exhausted everything known that you've ever seen, heard of, taken a picture of, seen, whatever. And, you know, but when it jumped up and the wings went out like that, and it was like holding position, you know, then you're like, what the hell?
Yeah. I can't even
she
imagine.
was so excited.
It's cool though that your daughter had that reaction. That's nice. It is. It's nice to rekindle the magic a little bit. It's easy to lose, and we all tend to do it, and we get really kind of jaded and skeptical. But that she will never forget.
It was great. It's a fairy, Daddy. It's a fairy. And then she was pointing, and then it went whoosh. I mean, it was fast. When it decided it was out of there, you barely saw it move. It was so quick.
Did it glance up before it leapt up, or was it looking up?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Like, its head was like proportionally very small to me, you know, from a distance like that. But I saw it, you know, zip straight up, and it was powerful. I don't think you never be able to catch this thing like a person running after it or anything like that. I would imagine, I don't even think a bird would have a very hard time catching it. Let's put it that way. A bird of prey, like a hawk or something like that,
right,
would never be able to, because this thing can suspend. It can hover in place and then go from 0 to 60 like that. I mean, it was holding position in wind. I think the wind was like 14 or 16 miles an hour at that point. And it was like right there, just looking at me. And yeah.
Yeah, the only other bird, which you mentioned, that can do that is a hummingbird. But you said that the vibration and the speed at which this thing's wings were going would be actually slower than a hummingbird. So
yeah, I could see the wings, though. And I know we have hummingbirds in the backyard. I know what a hummingbird is, and there's no hummingbird in the world that's got a wingspan of 4 feet.
No.
Physically impossible. But, hummingbirds don't have 4 clear insect wings. And they were ovals, though. Not like full ovals, but oval meaning like they weren't tapered.
Right.
They kind of like went out and, well, it's in the drawing that I sent you.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that's the actual episode image. So there's no, I can't find it. Where's the show notes? Somehow people can't find the show notes, even though it's right next to the, anyway, it'll be the episode image, so that will be very easy for folks to find that. Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't picking too badly at you, I hope. But finally you're like, you know what? Forget it. It's time. It's time to get it out there. So thank you for sharing that.
No, it was my pleasure. I wish I could have, had a picture or a video or something like that, but it's the last thing you expect to see driving home at night, on a dark road, in the snow, in the rain, in the wind, I'm sorry, and all of a sudden, crazy.
You could start putting them, like, of course you have raccoons and whatnot there too. I was going to say, you put some stuff up on an awning or on the roof, and nobody wants to climb up on a roof, though, really. Not the safest thing to do. But I just find the whole berry thing kind of interesting, and I've heard other accounts of people leaving certain, I hate the word gifts or gifting, because it reminds me of that side of the Bigfoot stuff. But, just find that interesting. You kind of try to make friends or appease them, or just say, hey, we're cool here.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see any point, to be honest, in going back repeatedly with the berries. I thought it was going to discourage my daughter if we did that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just and I felt silly too. I'm talking to trees. If this creature is around, it's not going to come down and say, hi, my name is Charlie, or my name is Darlene, and I'm your resident fairy. And
you never know, Max. I mean, you saw the thing in the first place, so.
I would have had a heart attack and on the spot. I would like.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, especially if it spoke. I'd be like, I'm out. I'm going to run into a tree. I need to knock myself out if I don't pass out first. That would be way too much for our brains to handle. There's no way.
Yeah. But if that was a fairy, then fairies are real.
It makes things like a Bigfoot just seem so like, well, duh, of course that's out there, right? I mean, that's so cool. I just love this story so much.
Thank you. I'm sure plenty of Sasquatch have run into these creatures before.
Yeah, I wonder what they think of them.
They probably try and eat them.
Yeah, they just swat at them like gnats. Just.
Ugh.
All right, so before you go, though, of course, you do write these little paleo fiction novels, so maybe we should just let people know about that since we're on,
I've never heard a 200,000 word book be referred to as little, but
yeah, I was trying to say that a little like sarcastically, I was just saying little novels.
I gotcha. Yeah, the novels I write are called the Cronus Rising series, and they are. The hashtag that has been linked onto it is Jaws meets Jurassic Park. So people can, if you're on social media and you look up hashtag Jaws meets Jurassic Park, you'll find the stuff right away. But that's basically what they are. It's prehistoric marine life being alive in the present, and obviously what happens when your oceans, which are fairly depleted with predators, courtesy of all the whales having been killed and most of the sharks having been finned, etc. What happens when some prehistoric marine life is released into a predator-free environment like that? And what happens to the people that frequent those oceans? And it's good stuff. Got a pretty extensive following on Facebook and stuff, and I'm very happy with the series.
What's the name of the page on Facebook for folks?
Cronus Rising novel series.
And you can, of course, find those lovely books on Amazon. And I just have to say, since I have you as close to in person as we can do right now, thank you for my Kraken Volume 1 poster. Did you see how lovely it looks on my wall?
I did. It's very nice.
It is. Nice. It is dominating when you walk into the room. It's just like, ha, ha, ha. I'm like, yeah, I love it.
That painting was done by an Italian paleo artist, Davide Bonadonna. I always have a hard time.
I just tried to write that down and I really screwed that one up. Do it again, Davide Bonadonna. It's Bonadonna, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Okay. Yes. And he is amazing. He actually did the painting for the first Cronus Rising novel as well. But the Kraken Volume 1 cover art so far is my favorite. He's actually working on the cover right now, or about to, I should say, for book 5. And it's going to be very exciting. It's a great concept for the cover art. And this is going to be the biggest book I've ever written, the current one that's coming out. So, if people want to check it out or hit me up for a free chapter or something, by all means, feel free to. Oh, good invite. Yeah, watch out, Stephen King.
So
Max is coming after you.
Somebody was talking about that actually last month. Stephen King's name came up, and he said, they were like, "You're not as successful as Stephen King, and you never will be." And the odds of that are true. And I said, "That's true." I said, "But I'm better looking." They were like, "That's true."
God, people are such a-holes sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, well,
never rah. Oh,
watch. Now, some Stephen King fans are going to start like haunting me after that comment.
The haters. Well, Max, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this story. I can't say the Fae story or anything because we're not going to put a label on it, but that's the closest we've got.
That's some core, whatever you want. You could say, is this what a fairy looks like or not? Or I don't know. There's so many possibilities, but it seems to fit the closest you can come with based on, say, the mythology is something like that. But thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little fire. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. But nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the cohorts to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. Well, we don't believe literally in reincarnation. That after your funeral, you will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it in this way. He said, the spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.